Call the meeting of the Leitchfield Utilities Commission to order for Thursday, February the 15th, 2024. You've been provided with a draft of the minutes of our meeting conducted on February 1. If there are no additions or corrections, would entertain a motion to approve those. Motion by Mayor Miller, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. The next is the approval and the ratification of the bill list. Anyone have any questions about anything on the bill list? Is there a motion to approve that? Motion by Mr. Jones. Do you second that, Mr. Alley, to approve the bill list? Okay. Motion by Keith, second by Pudgy. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. You had been provided the December 2023 financial statement at the February 1 meeting. Is there a motion to approve that as presented? Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mayor Miller. All in favor? All right. Next, we have visitors, and it's beginning to be tough to call him a visitor. He's kind of been around for a few years now, but Jeff Carter of Taylor Polson and Company is here to present the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. You should have, I'll give to you a copy of the audit report. It's in the bound, flat bound binder. If we'll open it up and turn to it, that's where we're going to start. On page 3, that is the independent auditor's report. And they've made it real nice and easy now. The standards have moved the opinion to the first 2 paragraphs. And in the second paragraph is the first paragraph tells what we audited, the second one tells the opinion. And it says financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the business activities and major funds of the Leitchfield utility system as of June 30th, 2023. What that is the unmodified opinion or the clean opinion or the unqualified opinion, depending on where you want to find the terminology at. It's now called unmodified opinion, which means there is nothing that we need to report separate from these financial statements to you. As you turn through, the rest of the report talks about who's responsible for what, management's responsibility for the financial statements, our responsibilities for the audit, and then other required supplementary information and other reports that are included in the package, and we'll cover them as we go through the package. On page 6, it starts the management discussion analysis. And that section there, it talks about the utility system and how it changed as compared to last year. So if we'll turn to page 7, I will cover these paragraphs by looking at the net position in totals compared 23 to 22. And as you look on the net position, which is a balance sheet, it's a snapshot, it tells you that your current assets and your other assets in total for 23 was $6.3 million. And in 22, it's $4.6 million. So there has been an increase of a little less than $2 million. Your non-current assets, which is your restricted cash and your capital assets, the plants and everything, as you can see, the restricted cash is 7.5 for 22 compared to 7.2, and your capital assets was 26.9, has increased to 27.080. So your total assets increased about 1.6 million from 39.1 million to 40.7 million for the year. Deferred outflows increased to around $120,000. And then you have your liabilities. Your current liabilities increased from $747,000 to $1.1 million. Most of that increase is to do with the note payments, current portion. And the long-term liabilities stayed virtually the same, 18.7 million to 18.74 million as well. So your total liabilities increased about $500,000. The deferred inflows, which is related to pension, stayed about the same as well, 1.1 to 1.17 in 22. Net position, the total net position for the city, for the utility went from 19.9 million to 21.2. And if you notice, the unrestricted has flipped from a deficit in the prior year to a $501,000 unrestricted positive fund balance now on there. Okay? Any questions on that? Page 8 shows operating results in total compared 22 to 23 in total captions. So your operating revenues increased about $500,000 from 7.4 to 7.9. Your non-operating revenues actually went down about 1.1 million, and your total revenues decreased from 10.1 to 9.5. The operating expenses actually increased a little bit. They went from 7.4 to 8 million, and your non-operating stayed virtually the same from 292,000 compared to 276,000. Total operating or total expenses was 7.7 million in 22. They're 8.2, increased about $500,000, and your change in that position was 2.4 in 22. It's 1.2 in 23. Now, okay.
Those two particular years have a lot of variance in grant income, don't they?
That is correct. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
In 22, you had some grant. You did have some grant in 23 as well, but it's not as significant as it was in 22. When we get to the details, I can point that out a little better on there. So if we turn, the rest of it just talks about basically the same thing and where things changed. So if we turn to page 12 and 13, this is statement of net position, and these are the same totals. This is just for 23, but these are the same totals, and they're in more broke down, a little bit more detail, as you can see. So your cash in current assets is 5.4 million, and then you have your receivables and other receivables and inventory and everything for a total of 6.3 million. And then you go to your non-current assets, and your restricted cash is 7.2 million. In your capital assets, you see the land, construction in progress, and your other capital assets. And of course, $13 million was moved from construction in progress this year to other capital assets for the treatment plant
Right.
that was placed in service. It had been being held in construction in progress.
Right.
So when it went there, that also started it on some depreciation, and that's where
Right.
we see in some changes in numbers.
Right.
Well, we didn't have depreciation on that last year.
Right.
That also inflated that income number last
Right.
year compared to this year.
Right.
Okay. And then you have your deferred outflows, and there are the deferred outflows and deferred inflows. Let me explain that real quick. Those numbers come from the state of Kentucky. Those are pension numbers, and the Kentucky Pension Authority provides those numbers, and they have to be recorded and adjusted each year to what they are. And it has to do with what the utility share of the pension liability could be. So you have an inflow, which is an outflow, which is actually a asset, and then you have an inflow, which is actually a liability. Then you have the actual pension liability that's listed over here on page 13. Your current assets, as I pointed earlier, your current portion of long-term debt this year is $321,000. So that accounts for that. In addition, you have accounts payable is $641,000, and that is significantly higher because I think there was an outstanding bill that y'all had received the money for. It had been recorded, and it's to do with the last part of the water treatment plant. So it was a significant payable. It just hadn't, the check on your side hadn't been
Right.
written yet. It had been approved and everything, just not written yet. So it was accrued because it was a 23 expense. Okay? And then you got your non-current assets. Your bonds is 13.2 million. The deposits that are on with the people who have service is 574,000. And then those are the net pension that I just covered a second ago as you come in. And then it shows you in your net position how it is broken down. So you have 13.5 million that is invested, of your net position invested in the capital assets. That is the total land and other assets on the page 12, less any and all related debt to that. Comes to 13.5 million. Your restricted for capital outlay is 5.1 million. That is, in that restricted cash, there's 5.1 million that is restricted for future capital outlay. And then you have restricted for debt service to pay the debt, pay the bonds of 2.1 million, and the depreciation fund is in that as well. And then the unrestricted is a positive 501 this year.
Jeff,
Any
on the,
questions?
it's probably on the invested in capital assets net of related debt,
Yeah,
that's where, I mean, basically our water plant's not gonna have much of an effect there because it's
Right.
our cost, but we have a lot of debt. Of course, there should be about $3 million worth of it because
Right.
of the grant, right?
right.
So,
Right. So it's kind of,
do you know what that number was in last year's audit? I guess what I'm saying, would it have been about 10?
the 13.5 million,
Yeah.
not right offhand. Let me look. I don't,
That's okay, I can get last year's audit and look at it.
yeah, I do. It was 13.073 last year, it's 13.5 this year. So it increased a little bit this year. Of course, last year, it wasn't in service,
But we already had it valued.
but you already had value because
All right.
it was in construction in progress.
Yeah, all right,
You had about 9 or 10 million of it in construction progress last year that was not being depreciated.
gotcha.
Okay. That is the number that I don't have is construction progress
Yeah,
compared to
all
last year.
right. Yeah, that's where it would have been.
No. I may actually have that. To answer your question, Bob, on page 22,
Gotcha.
you had
Yeah.
13.033 million in construction progress.
Yeah,
So it was, and now you only have 282.
yeah,
So it was still there, just not being depreciated. That's kind of the length of
Okay.
the curve in it.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. We turn to page 14. This is statement of revenues, expenses, changes in net position, and it's broken down where you can see what each department did, the water department, sewer department, gas department. So you have your total revenues, what each department brought in, the total 7.9 million for all departments. You have your operating expenses for each department. The waters was 3 million, the sewers 2.1, and the gas was 2.8, the total was 8 million. Then it shows you whether or not each department had income or loss. And as you can see, the water had a loss of 655,000 from operations, the sewer 225, the gas had an $810,000 profit. The total loss from operations was 71,000. Now, part of that loss, if you look at the operating loss, part of that is to do with depreciation of 729,000 in the water department. And the same with the sewer, that's the depreciation on the equipment. If you go on down, you have your non-operating revenues, and as we pointed out earlier, 1.1 million of those non-operating revenues is the grant income associated. And part of it's associated with the treatment plant, and part of it was associated with some ARPA funds that was sent over from the city to you in the granting income. Okay. So you come down, your total change in net position, water showed a profit 210,000, sewer showed a profit of 232, gas shows a profit of 855, and the total profit for the utility for this year is 1.2 million, and that changed your net position by that 1.29 million. Okay.
Yep.
Page 15 and 16, that's the statement of cash flow. And what the statement of cash flow shows you is where you spent your money or where you made your money this year to change your cash and cash equivalents. So at the bottom 15, it shows that your beginning of the year cash balance was 11.3 million, and your end of the year is 12.7 million. And on page 16, it shows how that's broken down between restricted and unrestricted cash. And each of those captions shows where money was either spent or brought in to change that cash balance. Your next section is your notes to the financial statements. I'm not going to bore you with those or spend a lot of time in it. I will point out, like I did a second ago, page 22. That is your capital assets. That's your what each system has for as far as lines or buildings and equipment. And you get your wastewater, your water system, your gas system, and your equipment, vehicles, land improvements. So at the beginning of the year, the total of that was 42.2 million. The end of the year is 56.4 million. And then you have your depreciation on it throughout the years. So you have a net balance of 27.08 million for the year after depreciation. And if you look down at the bottom, that shows you what your book value of your assets is, and it's 26.3 million on that. Okay. On page 23, that tells you the change in cumulative depreciation for the year, but it starts in the notes and revenue bonds. So if we'll flip over to 24, that table there tells you what how much you owe in revenue bonds, how much you paid, what is due in the next year, and then it shows you what your other liabilities are that are long-term that you may or may not have to pay within the year, and that is to do with the net pension and that OPEB liabilities. Those are numbers the state have you to put on there. Those are to put notice to you that if there was a pension failure, a complete failure, that you could potentially be responsible for. They're not going to let that happen at this point in time. So that's those numbers. The customer deposit number is the deposits that are on hand for your services, and you can tell how they increase and decrease with the additions each year, how many requested their deposits back, how many new deposits you got. And then the sewer line construction, those are the little subdivisions and how much it reduces each year on that. Page 25 shows you your requirements for your debt, the $13.5 million that you owe, how much interest you owe on it, how much total you owe, and it runs it out to the end. It shows you the first 5 years what you're going to have an outlay for the first 5 years, and then it's in 5-year increments thereafter. Okay. Pretty much the rest of the footnotes deal with the pension plans, so we'll skip those, and we will move quickly. I'll just point out to you page 47, page 48. 47 takes each of those system operations, general operating, and general administrative expenses and breaks them down in detail to show you where you're actually spending your money and where those numbers come from. Page 48 is the new schedule that we finally have gotten into concerning with the joint use between the city and the county, and how much is joint use, how much is city use. And then 49 is the grant income that is specifically related to the sewer and what the expenditure, not the sewer, the water treatment plant, and the water plant that was specifically used in this year. It's $836,000 of federal grant money was used to finish that out. Page 50 is the notes to it, and tells you what the debt is on it there on note 5. 51 is your governmental auditing standards, report on internal control and compliance, and there is no deficiencies, there is no significant deficiencies, there is no material weaknesses, and there is no internal control related matters or compliance related matters reported in that report. Okay? The next report after that Page 53, that's the independent auditor's report on the federal program or the grant money. And again, that one goes through it, and there is no deficiencies, no weaknesses, no significant deficiencies reported in that. There is no control matters reported in that. And page 56 reiterates what I just said. It tells the results. We issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. We reported no deficiencies, no control matters in either of those, point 2 and 3 and 4. Number 5, it tells that the auditor's report on compliance was an unmodified opinion as well. 6, it tells that there has been no audit findings in relation to the grant program. 7 tells what program was the major program. And 8 tells what the threshold for determining a major program is $750,000. 9, you're not a low-risk auditee because you've had federal grants before. That's the report. The other report quickly talks about what is significant matters and significant footnotes and significant parts. We've listed those in those 2 bullet points of what are the significant items. It tells that the financial statements were neutral, consistent, and clear, that there was no difficulty performing the audit. It tells that there was 2 entries that we made that related to the pension. That is in just about every governmental audit that is in that pension plan, because you have to wait till we do the audit and they release those numbers to us to get those in there, okay? And then there's no risk agreements for management. The representation letter was signed, and to our knowledge, there's been no other consultations, and there's no other findings. Bob, I thank you all. I thank you for a relationship that we've had. I thank the mayor, and I thank Lori and Sabrina for their hospitality while I was over performing the audit. They made it easy to do that, and I appreciate everything you've done.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate for the report and appreciate for the diligence in preparing it. Does anybody have any questions about the report? It's pretty straightforward. We need to pass this report on to the city because it becomes part of their report. So I think we need a motion to go ahead and accept it. And
I'll make a motion.
motion by Keith to forward to the city, and second by Pudgy. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Again, thank you very much. I would like to make a comment too that, you know, it is non-modified. It's, I think there's some good numbers in this. I'd like to thank the commission and thank the staff of the Leitchfield Utilities and our group together as we work together to have the financial condition for the utility system that we have. I'm pretty pleased with this financial condition overall. So we're sound without overcharging our customers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
You all have a good evening. I'm fixing to head back.
I can imagine.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
The next item of business is unfinished business, and we were presented the regional facilities plan at our last meeting. I know our legal counsel, Mr. Vickery's looked through it. I've looked through it once we received it some. Dwight has had someone kind of looking through it for us besides himself. I did notice that, I mean, we have a couple of minor things to talk to Benton about. Just a way, maybe a couple of maps were placed in there that seemed out of sequence. There may have been a typo or two that we caught, but nothing substantive. So what I'd like to do is get us to pass on direction to HMB to go ahead with these minor corrections that we've noted to send the report on to the Division of Water. Any question about that? Is there a motion to do so? Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mayor Miller. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor of
Aye.
that? So the motion is to direct HMB to go ahead and file the regional facilities plan with the minor modifications that we're going to note to them onto the Division of Water. The next item of business is to record in our minutes. There's been a new appointment to the Utility Commission to take effect at our first meeting in March. Mr. Kevin W. Ferris has been appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council to fill a seat on the Utilities Commission. And so we look forward to working with Kevin. Him having been appointed to that does let us know, though, that the term that was expiring is the one that had belonged to Greg Bernard, and I'd like to personally thank Greg for the work that he's done for Leitchfield Utilities, and to express our appreciation for his willingness to serve in this capacity. He's been a valuable asset to us, and so we just want to pass on regards to him. Is that duly noted? And I don't think we need, I mean, there's no action for us to take.
No, there's
That's
no
not-
action, but I did bring up something to Dave this afternoon when we were talking on the phone. Greg's term ends on 2/28, and this term always falls on leap year, so do we need to change that to 3/29, or David even suggests changing the end date to the last day of February on that term? Just kind of some cleanup work to where it falls on the right day, because the next person doesn't take office until 3/1, so on leap year, you got that one day. Just housekeeping.
I don't particularly have a problem with that, other than just, make sure there's no, it only happens once every 4 years. It would
Yeah.
happen to that particular seat.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we meet on the first and third Mondays, which could never
Yeah.
be a 29th. I don't know that there's any, I guess, it keeps you from having a vacancy for one day.
Right.
If you were to have to blow up and have some kind of,
The odds are not in our, what are the odds on that? But I just noticed that and didn't know if we wanted
Yeah.
to just do some housekeeping and get it fixed.
as long as it doesn't cause confusion, I
Right.
guess is my own thing. I mean, where would we have to change that?
I don't know that we have the authority to change it, but I just suggested we just make it the last day of February, that way you never have to worry about it.
Yeah. Just forward that on to them for their appointment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
all right. I don't have, if you want to take care of that, fine. Anybody else have anything else tonight? Any further business? The February chamber luncheon will be March the 14th, or the March.
Sorry, that should be March
Yeah,
chamber
the March
luncheon.
chamber luncheon will be March 14th. If you plan to attend, let Lori know. If there's no other business, it would entertain a motion to adjourn, which has been made by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Alley. Any discussion? All in favor of adjournment? Meeting adjourned.